Hey there, friends. Pretty interesting piece of information and probably a pretty critical bit of information, at least people in the southern part of the country should probably be paying attention to. There was a notice that came out. It was an alert to FFLs by the ATF. It read, Notice of Intent for Large Caliber Firearm Purchases. It went on to read, law enforcement is advising federal firearms licensees of expanding interest of criminal networks' intention to utilize straw purchasers in acquiring large caliber firearms such as .50 caliber and or belt-fed rifles within the next 60 days. This activity is anticipated to occur throughout the entire state of Texas. Please contact your local ATF office if any suspicious attempted or finalized purchases occur. Well, outside of the feds initiating these types of straw purchases and trying to funnel and run guns to Mexico, as they have historically been known to do, so outside of them doing that, there's not a whole lot of other news that we typically will hear about with things like this. What's a little bit concerning and frightening to me is that they have a specific timeline associated with this within the next 60 days. That tells me they know something or that they're planning something, just saying, that is supposed to happen. So much higher sense of awareness out there. So what I did is I reached out to some contacts that I have. I actually reached out to some Border Patrol folks down here. As you guys may know, I live in South Louisiana. We are a stone's throw from the border. You get in your car, by lunchtime, you're at the border. So we have a lot of very active Border Patrol agents down here, a full-blown department down here, and we see them all the time. So I reached out to some contacts that I have. Obviously, I'm not going to disclose those sources, but I spoke to two different people from the Border Patrol. The first thing that they told me was, yes, that there was an elevated level of chatter, and they didn't go into any detail and say what specifically they were talking about, but it was definitely an elevated level of chatter regarding these types of weapons. As most of you may or may not know, the cartels love them some Barrett. They love them some .50 cals. Belt-fed, I wasn't so sure that they were into the belt-fed stuff quite as much. I've always known that they liked the .50 cal Barretts, but apparently the belt-feds too. Back in 2021, in fact, one of the agents that I spoke to was involved in this massive seizure back in 2021 where thousands of firearms and hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition were on their way to Mexico to be smuggled down there from the United States. Well, one of the agents that I spoke to was involved in that. While he did say there were no Barretts involved in that seizure of those guns heading south, he did say that there was a belt fed that was disassembled that was in there. It was not a fully assembled belt fed, but obviously was going to be assembled once it got below the border. One of them mentioned that the border crisis is at an unprecedented level right now that the general public has absolutely no idea of. He said, you will not see any of this on the news. Now, they both warned me that any further info would directly and immediately impact several ongoing operations. So clearly there is very much a heightened sense of awareness right now, more so than normal. You know, if you had those color-coded warnings that we used to have with the terrorism and stuff, it's probably an orange or a red right now. Definitely right now, the atmosphere along the southern border is not what it normally is, even though it's usually out of control, at least since Biden got in there. Now, as you can see in a bunch of these videos that I pulled, the cartels are definitely big fans of the .50 cal. They are known for shooting at airplanes. In many cases, I know that it's a bragging right thing for them in many cases, but in many cases they use them to shoot at law enforcement, at the Mexican police, who they're always getting into firefights with, because obviously these things are going to penetrate an engine block, penetrate a vehicle, most armor they're going to penetrate. So this is a very valuable weapon to them. They can also shoot down the police helicopters with these, which they are known to try to do. So, I mean, you have a big round like this that's going to go upwards to a mile away with a certain level of accuracy. And folks, with the whole .50 cal thing, this is not totally new. A few months ago, something very similar to this was happening, not the warning, but the fact that these guns were moving down to Mexico with these .50 cals like this. This was actually an active story just from a couple of months ago.
A dangerous cartel, the Sinaloa cartel, once led by El Chapo, is accused of trying to buy guns right here in Tulsa, according to a federal affidavit. Guns like this one, a high-powered Barrett .50 caliber rifle. According to federal court documents, 3 people in the Tulsa area were after the high-powered Barrett rifle: Cesar David Lopez, Juan Antonio Duran, Jose Nicolas Flores are accused of paying tens of thousands of dollars in cash to get the guns. The document says one store owner says it was clear that Durant was unfamiliar with the firearm, as he did not know it came in either bolt action or semi. Agents served a warrant at a Tulsa home where they found Lopez and took him into custody. According to court documents, Lopez told agents that he works as a painter and that he believed the firearms were going to Mexico and likely to a cartel. Court documents show that Lopez had a Facebook page showing pictures affiliated with the Sinaloa cartel.
Now, the thing I would certainly point out is that if anyone from the federal government is putting out a warning, they don't like to show their hand. They don't like to show you what they're planning, what they're working on, what they're working with. I can assure you they were hesitant about putting this warning out. The fact that they did it means it's much worse than what they're leading on. Much worse. And these Border Patrol agents that I spoke to, I didn't have to explain to them why I was calling them. They knew why I was calling them. Guys, there is something happening right now. There is something afoot. I don't know what it is. I don't want to sit here and act like I know what it is because I don't have that level of intelligence, right? I just know that when you talk to people who are in the know, when you talk to people who are essentially the tip of the spear in these types of scenarios and these realms and these circles, and you hear that hesitancy in their voice, and you hear them slow down and very carefully choose what they can or want to tell you, that gives me reason to pause. And let me tell you another thing. This warning came from the ATF. Can you think of a single warning from the ATF that has ever benefited gun owners in America? Can you think of one? I can't. The ATF has never been a fan of gun owners in America, and they have never been an ally to gun owners in America. They have been the sworn enemy to honest, law-abiding gun owners in America for as long as I can remember. So if the ATF is putting out a warning, it either tells me that things are really, really bad, or else I should really be thinking what the motive is of the ATF to put out a warning. What are they trying to cause? Because remember, this is an ATF guided by Joe Biden right now. This is an ATF who pats themselves on the back and they are getting rewarded for putting notches on their bedpost, so to speak, by putting FFLs out of business. I'm not talking about straw purchases. I'm talking about putting FFLs smooth out of business just because they can add that to the list and to the pile and say, I did that. That's what bothers me. They have a motive. And when you look at what their motive might be, you have to take where their leadership, quote unquote, comes from. It comes from the White House. Right now, the White House is perfectly happy with and in fact encourages an open border. So the fact that the White House wants the border to remain open, remember, these people were guided by the feds were to go down and cut razor wire that the officials in Texas had put out there. So the federal government is literally working against honest, law-abiding Americans along the border. So the fact that the ATF and these feds that cut this razor wire and the White House all want the open borders, and that's who's guiding the ATF, and the ATF puts out this warning, that tells me the ATF does not have the same common goal that I have, which is to protect the border and any danger that might be coming across. So why is the ATF actually doing this? That's what's got me totally perplexed. Because, again, they don't have the same goals that I do. So I would be thinking when you give me this warning, I would be, if it was coming from one of you guys, I kind of know where you're shooting from. And I know what to look out for. When this comes from the ATF, who is known more for setting people up than for helping people out, I gotta wonder what's really going on here.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America. He's over.